Welcome to Casey Cares. We're the voice of Kansas City nonprofits, and we connect the nonprofit and business sectors to enhance the quality of life in Kansas City for our residents and our visitors. This Casey Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. Here at Casey Cares, we shine a light on the people and the organizations making a difference in our community and beyond. Today, we're honored to welcome Tristan and Jordan Mace, the inspiring husband and wife team behind Transplants. It's a nonprofit dedicated to supporting transplant patients, donors, caregivers, and families every step of the way. Now, each year, more than 49,000 organ transplants take place in the United States, offering hope and a second chance at life. Tristan knows this journey firsthand. After receiving an emergency life-saving heart transplant, he experienced both the challenges and the incredible gift that transplantation can provide. Through it all, Jordan was by his side, helping navigate the uncertainty, the waiting, and the recovery. Their experience opened their eyes to the needs of transplant patients and families and inspired them to create Transplants, which is a patient-focused nonprofit committed to education, support, research, and advocacy. Today, their work reaches people across every stage of the transplant journey, helping ensure that no one has to face it alone. Tristan and Jordan's story is one of resilience, hope, gratitude, and purpose, and we're excited to share it with you. Well, welcome to both of you. I'm so glad we could find some time. You guys are so busy with your work. You have little ones, etc. So thanks for taking time to talk here. I would love if you would really share in your own words this journey and how this all happened. Somebody would look at you, Tristan, and go, a heart transplant? What? So tell us a little bit about what that journey has been.
Yeah, well, so Jordan's originally from Kansas City. We met in New York, and we had moved back to Kansas City in 2020. And about 6 months of being here in Kansas City on a Friday evening, I had difficulty breathing. And so Jordan drove me to the local emergency room. And because it was during the pandemic, she had to stay in the car. And so she was 3 months pregnant with our first child. And I walked into the ER unassisted. And 20 minutes later, I was on a ventilator. And so I was in a coma. And my heart had failed, and as a result, my lungs were failing, my kidneys were failing, and liver was failing. And so I was emergently life-flighted to the University of Kansas Hospital, so KU Medical Center, and was added to the national waiting list as an emergent status 1 on the national waiting list for a heart transplant, and subsequently got that Monday morning. So I walked in Friday night, transplant Monday morning, and was in a coma the whole time and woke up the following weekend and learned I had the heart transplant. And due to the organ failure itself that occurred back previously, I had had 2 strokes and 5 years of memory loss. So when I woke up, there was a whole confluence of learnings and realizations and subsequent realizations of both the miraculous nature of living through all of this, but also certainly some of the challenges that I would face continuing on.
I will say, 5 years of memory loss is not a typical outcome for transplant. So if you're hearing this and wondering what the organ transplant process is like, it's not always nearly as dramatic as his on-ramp of 4 organs failing all at the same time, immediately getting added to the wait list, having a heart offer the very first night, having a second heart offer the next night, and having that second heart offer put into his body the third day. That's pretty atypical of the process. Normally, this is someone that's getting very sick over a period of time. They're working with their heart transplant center or any organ transplant center. They're working with the team. They're trying to understand whether or not transplant's the right option for them. Getting listed usually takes a long time, getting approved, and then actually getting that first offer. Usually that takes a period of months, sometimes even years. There are 100,000 people currently on the waiting list for organ transplants. So we're very mindful that your experience has been pretty unique. It's been unique in a variety of ways, but it was also very unique in how quickly he was able to go from needing an organ to getting an organ. The thing that wasn't unique in the process, though, was actually the experience that I had being in the ICU waiting room, knowing nothing about organ transplantation. The day before, he seemed to be a healthy man, and now we were talking about life support via an ECMO machine, acting as his heart and his lungs, talking about maybe getting a heart transplant, what that would look like, what that would cost, what the recovery would be like, what his long-term life expectancy would be. I was Googling everything. I was scared. I was alone. I was pregnant. And so I was given a binder. And that binder had all the information that I would be given from the very beginning of considering a transplant all the way through his recovery. And that binder was comprehensive, but it was thin. And it was remarkable to me. I'm turning every single page. I'm Googling, will he live? What happens if he doesn't? What does a transplant go into? What does that look like? What about the medication? There's 26 medicines he'll take twice a day. What does that look like? And so when he woke up, and we started to go through the recovery process, we said, we've had such a remarkable experience. We want to make it better for everybody else. Not everyone is going to have a heart offer within a weekend. Not everyone is going to wake up and be able to have the space and the time to make this our mission. And so that's where Transplant Story actually started, was in the hospital waiting room when he woke up.
Well, I think you sell yourself a little short. I can't even imagine. And it was during COVID. And my husband was very sick in COVID. And I remember dropping him off at an emergency facility, and, you couldn't go in. So it sounds like they made some allowances for you. Thank goodness. But then you had the concern of being pregnant and all of that. Well, so glad that it turned out the way that it did. Tristan, how are you doing now? Give us an update of where you're at, and because I know it's a process in life as you continue with an organ.
It is. And one of the things that I've been so privileged is better understanding the nuances, actually. My journey is rather unique in that it's really three different pieces of a medical journey wrapped up in one. And so there's a transplant side of this, there's a complex patient side, and a memory
Mhm.
loss side. From a transplant perspective, I'm doing great. I take my medications. There are some challenges that go with that. There's a greater likelihood of infection. And so you have to be more diligent from that. I've experienced a few of the more rare complications with transplant too. So both of my hips actually have had to be replaced due to my immunosuppression. They're affecting my
Mm.
bones in a way that they don't affect other recipients, which is great for them. But in my case, it's having an impact for me. And so at the young age of 33, I had both my hips replaced. And so managing with two little kids running around is a little more challenging. But I mean, it is one of those scenarios too where you're reminded of the journey and the changes of that journey. There were periods in the ICU of waking up that I wondered if I would live the next couple of hours or live the next day. And so for that change to be where I'm getting to celebrate milestones as a family, that's like light years different. And so the generosity of my donor's family, of an entire medical team that came together to make this possible, like those are the special moments out of all of it.
So, Jordan, you said this is where this idea was born. Oh my gosh, do you have your wits together? I wouldn't necessarily be thinking about that at that point in time. So, Tristan comes through the surgery. You're dealing with lots of other medical things. When did you all to say, I think we can do something, and let's do it through a nonprofit?
Honestly, it was pretty immediate. It was shocking to us. Candidly, I did not think that this would become transplants.org and this nonprofit that it's become, which is a much bigger dream than I ever envisioned. I was just trying to keep him motivated. I wanted him to have something to work on. He had lost the ability because he was in a coma for so long. He had lost 40 pounds. He had lost the ability to use his hands. He had to relearn to walk. And so I brought his laptop in when he was we would have big like Legos like our kids use. And that's how he was learning how to use his hands again. I brought his laptop and it changed his life. He filed our taxes in the ICU, which was pretty great for me. One less thing I had to worry about during this crazy period. But as we were thinking through, what would we have wanted in this experience if we were to ever have to do this again? Because we're both people that build things. So Tristan hasn't shared this, but his background, he built his first company at 14. And he has since built multiple companies. They are all built on technology. And it's taking something that's happening in the everyday and trying to fix it with the use of technology. That's his background. He's been doing that for 15 years, almost 20 years at this point. And so with that, we've always been people that think, I work in technology as well. We've been thinking about what would we build for our retirement project. We bought mace.org on like a second or third date. We thought we'd build a nonprofit at some point in our life. We had a few ideas of what that mission might be, but we assumed as our lives progressed, we'd pick the thing and that's what we'd work on together. And then when he went down, we said, okay, it's hearts.
It picked us.
Yeah, it picked us in a way. But we knew what our mission was going to be. It was going to be related to heart transplants, transplant patients, advocating for donors, something along those lines. And so when I brought his laptop, he just started writing things down. And I was explaining to him the experience because normally this is a decision the patient makes. But this was a decision that I made entirely on my own without the person that I normally make huge decisions with. So I was explaining to him, okay, so when an organ is going from one place to another place logistically, there's 70 phone calls that like physical phone calls that are required in order to make that process happen. And I work at a marketing tech company where we're using APIs and sending things from here to there in milliseconds. So as we were like writing down the process, we were thinking, wow, if you don't know anything about this, how would you learn? You would learn from a binder. What if English isn't your first language? What if you don't know anything about this process? What if you're considering being a living donor? We need kidney donors that are living to consider donation. How would we learn that? And we were Googling everywhere and there wasn't that resource. So it started out as this amorphous idea of how could we give back to this community and truly honor the donor that saved his life and gave us this bonus time. And from that, transplants.org started to shape. And now we have the first of its kind place for education and advocacy and community from the very beginning of your journey all the way through the rest of your life.
This is a huge undertaking, and you're both working elsewhere.
We have maintained full jobs. We're very fortunate that he was able to go back to work. But now this is your full-time focus.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. So you were smart and savvy enough to think someday we're going to have a nonprofit. This cause picked you. How did you go about, building and crafting this kind of thing? And you're connecting all over the place.
Yeah. Well, I think for us, there's a couple of different aspects. There are a number of stakeholders in the organ donation and transplant journey. And so for us, it was really important to get those different perspectives represented through that process. And so from a candidacy perspective, from a caregiver perspective, from a potential living donor or a living donor themselves, which are applicable only for a couple of organs or stem cell transplant, and then also from a recipient perspective, and then also from the transplant center perspective. So you have clinicians, you have transplant coordinators. They're called organ procurement organizations that are involved on the logistics side. And so for us, we wanted to be well informed of each of those different stakeholders and some of the opportunities that they saw and also some of the challenges they saw in their day-to-day kind of reality for that. And from that, I think what we did is we effectively made a table for everyone to come and sit down with and be able to share that perspective. And the output of that was we were very fortunate that as we were clarifying our vision, more and more started to say, this doesn't exist actually. If you think of what the American Cancer Society has created for the cancer patient population, there is no equivalent in transplant. Nothing around the education and navigation and driving research and innovation in an advocacy group that represents the totality of the community. And so we've been privileged through that, where we found it was individuals, and many of those are leaders of major transplant centers. So we have heads of transplant at Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic and Vanderbilt and Duke and so forth, which are some of the largest centers. And then we also found that it was folks from public policy as well. So we had folks from HHS, former executives, and in fact, the former US congressman who wrote the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. So if you see handicap signs, they were responsible for the creation of that. And then we also have brought a lot of people from technology together to really take on this as the initiative that it needs to be.
Now, I will say for anyone that might be listening later on, if you have a wonderful idea for a nonprofit, that's a great place to start. But don't necessarily dive head first into building that nonprofit unless you are very familiar with the space. And more importantly, if you're surrounding yourself with great people. We're really fortunate that you have such a background in building companies. Granted, they were for profit, but you had a lot of experience as an operator and what is like legally required in order to get this going. As a healthcare nonprofit, thinking about private health information, we have to be exceptionally careful about our security, our HIPAA compliance, the way that we think about communicating with people, not as your medical representative, but as someone is that are offering advice. So with that, we have absolutely been fortunate to surround ourselves with brilliant people that have done this before, people that are very invested in this space. And then we have some incredible supporters with Oracle as one of our design partners, with BioLung Engineering as one of our, they were one of our very first supporters that saw the vision, saw what we wanted to build, and are doing it together. So we're very grateful for all of that support. But also, it helps when you believe so passionately in the mission that you're doing. And it's hard to look at Tristan and hear a story and not see how imperative this specific process is and how important that community is. So I will say it's been a huge learning opportunity for us. It has been a full-time job on top of our full-time jobs, on top of being parents, on top of you being a patient. But it's been one of the most important things we've ever done.
What will people find when they go to transplants.org? What is, do you think, the overriding purpose? And that's where you connect, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so functionally, we have more than 400 patient education articles that span everything from organ and stem cell transplant and donation. So wherever somebody may be themselves or a caregiver or a family member, we have that entire longitudinal journey represented. So somebody who's considering a transplant, they may be recently evaluated or they may be waitlisted and awaiting that offer. So there is the notion there to be able to be a resource, and all of that content is expert vetted.
That's the binder that I was given access to that you can't get anywhere else. We've now democratized it. We've made it available to anybody.
Yeah, so we did the largest analysis of patient education materials in global transplant history. We did that in partnership with Oracle and Carnegie Mellon University. We had dozens of transplant centers that provided us with all of their education materials. And we analyzed those for the commonalities and variances. What is actually addressed? What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? And unfortunately, there's a lot of variability across many of these great centers. And so we have worked to summarize that and make that accessible to the broader community publicly. And then you also have the ability to search for different transplant centers and compare those. And so we have every U.S. organ transplant center and stem cell transplant in the country to be able to do that. So more than 450 different centers to be able to see locally and then see a lot of their information about it as well. So how many transplants are they performing? More importantly, what are the outcomes for those transplants. So what does survival look like if you're transplanted here versus here? And why may you choose or prefer to go to a particular center over another?
And so before transplants.org became public, the place that people got information pre-transplant was usually Google or Reddit, or hopefully their health systems. Post-transplant, the place where people got information, and I'm sad to say this, is Facebook. So when we were going through the process, we asked, where are the support groups? Where can we go find other like-minded people that have had this experience outside of our health system? We're so grateful for KU, and they've done so much for us in order to make sure that we are well like enmeshed in that community. And we were encouraged to go to Facebook support groups, which have thousands of members, and this is global.
Yep.
And we were seeing people every day saying, can I drink? Am I allowed to get a tattoo? Am I allowed to have children? Am I allowed to get in a public pool? What does this mean about a future transplant? This is my EF is this. What does that mean? Are you on this medicine? Are you on this medicine? And so truly, before transplants.org, that's where it was kind of gatekept. If you were already in the community, that's where you got the information. And if you weren't in the community, good luck. Hopefully you have a great OPO, organ procurement organization, or transplant center nearby. And so now finally, we have something that is available to everyone so that when you Google, what is a heart transplant recipient's life going to look like? Transplants.org is one of the first thing that pops up, and you're going to get vetted medical information that has been considered across the entire national waitlist community and not just necessarily in your area or Facebook.
That's a massive undertaking. Oh my gosh. How did you get these big players to play? And here you are in Kansas City. Let's not lose sight of that. I mean, it's internet and all that, but still.
Yeah, I think for so much of it, we've been privileged with a lot of icons within the transplantation field that have seen our vision too. And I think there's also been a deep appreciation for the way that we've gone about doing this. We didn't immediately kind of raise our hand and say, the system is broken and we want to go fix it. It was, let's learn about all of this and work collaboratively with these different groups. And so, as we started amassing support amongst some of these centers, we found some of their competitive centers said, actually, this is a really great initiative. We should also be supportive of this. This benefits our own patients. It also benefits other patients as well that are not part of our center. And so we've been very fortunate, I think, to have earned that support and that credibility over a couple of years. And as the byproduct of that, I think that's why we're able to offer the most comprehensive set of education materials available online for anyone going through transplant.
I would also add that we're very fortunate that our networks and our backgrounds in the for-profit space have been very helpful in the nonprofit space. And they've cared about this mission. And this is a community that you don't ever expect or want to be in. And then when you're in it for life. And so we've been really grateful to see how our for-profit experience has really helped us, how they've leaned into this mission and given us access to their networks or their resources, or they're saying, actually, my friend, her dad is waiting for a kidney. Would you want to go talk to them? And it's shown us how small this organ community actually is and how pervasive it is. Because like you said, you walk past Tristan on the street, you never think you've walked past a heart transplant recipient that was essentially dead 5 years ago. You see a normal guy on the street. And so when we've met these people, they've opened their doors wildly and given us access to people to talk to learn from, to network within. And then from that, like you mentioned, we've earned the opportunity to partner with them, and we're unbelievably grateful for their support.
Why did you choose a nonprofit? You're from the profit community. Why not make a buck? I don't mean to be
truly, it was
blunt, but why make it a nonprofit?
Very intentional decision, and this is one that is especially important to Tristan, so I'll let him answer that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly both of our backgrounds are in for-profit. This is an altruistic effort. This is something that benefits the collective good here. And there was also a strategic aspect to this too, which is as a function of working with these transplant centers, these are all offered at major health systems across the country. And so there's a dynamic there where when we focus on research, when we focus on innovation, on advocacy, you make a calculated decision, which is one, this should be available to everybody. But also, there's an aspect, I think if you went in as a for profit for most of these organizations, even with the lived experience, it's a non starter. It's something that is inherently um, not adding the value that it should in the way that you would expect it to. And so for us, when we think about how do you drive this community forward, it was always very clear that it had to be a non for profit.
When did the site actually launch?
Yeah, so we launched on May 5th of this year. So just a month ago, actually.
That's our first month anniversary.
About a month ago.
And what's the traction been like? Tell us a little bit about what the journey's been so far.
Yeah, it's been incredible to hear feedback from patients and from clinicians. The amount of clinicians, many of whom that we've had no relationship with, have reached out to us and said, this is an incredible resource. We want to share this with our own patient population. We've had centers that have asked if they can actually include our logo and information on their TVs in their internal clinic, in their waiting rooms, in the lobby for their patients. And so that's been great, but I'll tell you the most meaningful feedback that I've received so far. We review these, us and our team, but the one that really struck me was an individual, we don't know kind of age or sex, but they are going through the kidney evaluation. And so on every patient education article, we have the ability to provide feedback. Was this helpful? Was this not helpful? How can we improve it? And they wrote that it was helpful, and there's an optional drop down and comment. And they wrote, this will be helpful for me with my conversation with my nephrologist later today. And like, that's the whole point behind this, is how do you help add that value to a patient that they can have more robust, informed conversations with their doctors, with their surgeons, to make sure they're prepared for the journey.
And for me, this has been a labor of love for 5 years, and we've been putting so much time and thought and intentionality behind it. And so when we originally shared it, we haven't made lots of videos. We don't have our whole social media plan even figured out. We're just two parents in Kansas City trying to do better for our community. And so I shared on my LinkedIn network and Facebook, and I could show my mom, and my mom could say, look what my daughter's been working on with her husband. And from there, we've had so many people that say, you don't know me, but I know this person that knows this person that knows this person, and they sent transplants over to me, and it's really helpful for me. And the amount of people that have reached out to me in my own professional community that said, I've been waiting for a kidney for 2 years. This site is so helpful for me and useful. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And these are clients of mine that we had no idea we had this in common. So for me, the word of mouth for the patient community has been really beautiful.
I was going to say, you're in infancy. So what's part of the plan to get this out there so more people, like the person who's going to bring it up with their nephrologist, is doing? How do you make that ripple effect go?
Yeah, so there's a few different pieces. Certainly, working closely with transplant centers is a great mechanism with that credibility of this is an additional resource for their patients to be able to use and be more informed of. There's a word of mouth. This is a community that I think has actually craved this for a long time. There's been a long need for this. And so we're finding that candidates and recipients are sharing this very quickly with others. That's wonderful. And then there's the dynamic of how do we ultimately use this and augment these voices to be able to further champion a lot of the things that need to be happening for patients as well in this community. So there's
how do you
to further
I'm sorry,
this community.
I interrupted you. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. What do you see as your next steps in moving this forward now?
Yeah, so we're about to unveil a couple of things that are really great around enabling individuals to actually create an account, to have different benefits for them with that account creation, different tools, different resources. And it's going to, I think, help somebody better navigate through the journey. So here's where I am. Here, what do I need to know right now? What questions should I be asking? What can I anticipate immediately forward? And I think also a way to help individuals be able to celebrate the milestones that they have been able to have in this bonus time too. That's something that, I'm just over 5 years out, and so as you'd imagine, that was a tremendous anniversary to be 5 years post transplant with a new heart. And so it's also, how do you share that? How do you do that in a way that is authentic, that celebrates some of the milestones and welcoming a first son and now a second son, and also do that in a way that adds to the national conversation of why donation is such a wonderful gesture. Why should people register to donate, and do that in a fashion that is authentic and there's education behind it too.
I will say he is 5 years out, and the median life expectancy for a heart transplant recipient is 10 to 11 years. So median, you're halfway through. And so we're very mindful for us. People ask, why are you doing it right now? Why not let him recover a little bit more? You've got, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Why are we doing it right now? Time means something different. And we got that perspective at 31, and we want to pay it forward and give it back because we don't take the bonus time for granted at all. So we are just going to keep focusing and serving this community. We are so new into being publicly available that for anyone that might be listening, for anyone in your audience, in your community, we would love to hear how this might impact you, how we might be able to partner together. The nonprofit space is one that is so inclusive and helpful, and they focus on partnership. We would love if we can serve you in any capacity. We'd love to see how we can. But more importantly, just to say thank you to you and Casey Cares for giving us an opportunity to share our story, to share this resource. And hopefully we'll be back in a year telling you all the incredible things that we've been doing in the last 12 months.
Well, quickly, as we get to near the end of our time together, do you plan to do any events and those kinds of things, which are sometimes typical for a nonprofit versus everything being, online, et cetera?
Yeah, so next year we'll host our first inaugural annual summit. And so that'll be a great opportunity to have people from within the community and also from transplant centers and leading physicians that are driving a lot of the research and innovation forward as well.
We are all over the scene when it comes to conferences for the health systems and the people that are making these transplants available. What we're really excited about moving forward now that we're alive is we can go meet patients where they are. We're meeting patients in the hospital room one-on-one, and it's been beautiful. But we also want to go to places like the transplant games, which is where transplant patients can actually go and have their own mini Olympics. We want to go meet patients where they are too. But also within the Kansas City community, there's so many opportunities for us to get to know everyone. We've got this incredible OPO right here in the Midwest that is helping, is the reason that you got your heart. There's a Donate Life Walk every single year. We'll be there. So there's a lot of opportunities, but it's one that we really want to take advantage of.
Well, Jordan and Tristan, thank you for what you're doing. So sorry that it's personal experience that drove it, but I know that that's given it the passion and the oomph needed to make this fly. So we can't wait to see where Transplants goes. Transplants, plural.org. Check it out. Give it great thought. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, which is a nonprofit. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. Now, if you'd like to know more information about KC Cares, you can go to our website, which is kccaresonline.org. Spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio, and Instagram is KC Cares Online. And don't forget, you can catch us Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.